Bitcoin is close to becoming worthless.
Let's go. Now, what's the Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like rat poison.
Yeah. Oh,
The greatest scam in history.
let's get it.
Bitcoin will go to fucking zero.
Yeah.
Alright, you ungovernable misfits. I'm your host, Max. Everybody knows that Bitcoin is useless, worthless, and doomed to fail. But what if everyone's wrong? What if it's the system that is doomed to fail? Join me as I speak to some of the brightest people in the space and slither to the deepest, darkest depths of the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Today's episode is with Ben Ark. He's an absolute legend. We get into some of the stuff he's been doing with LN Bits and the other projects he's been working on. The man's prolific. He has been working on so many different things over the past couple of years, as well as putting out incredible content, and we are very, very proud to be featuring him for 21ism this month. This was from an episode I recorded for 21ism, and if you haven't checked it out, I suggest you go and read through the amazing article that was written by Self-Banked, along with checking out the other categories at 21ism.com. Before we dive in, I just want to say thank you to my new sponsor, Foundation Devices. I'm so fucking hyped to have these guys on board. Ever since taking this thing out the box, it must have been 2-3 months ago, I got sent one out just to test it, give a bit of feedback. I've been so impressed it's become my daily driver. I use this thing all the time. It's weighty, it feels nice, it's really slick to use, it's fully open source, it's got QR scanning, PSBT, it's got everything that you could want, and it's so simple. Anyone who listens to this show knows I manage to fuck everything up, and I'm always on the phone to Q&A just saying, look mate, I've broken this today, how do I fix it? I'm probably the bane of his life, and every time he sees the phone ring he just thinks, oh fucking hell, I'm not this bloke again. But he hasn't had to listen to me with this one because it is honestly so simple. I've been suggesting it to all my friends and family, well, the ones I've managed to orange pill anyway, and I don't feel concerned about setting it up with them and then making a mistake because it really is so simple. You can pair it with Blue Wallet or any of your other favourite wallets like Sparrow. If anyone's listening to this and they're just, I'm not sure, I haven't seen one, then go across to foundationdevices.com. And if you have any questions at all, you can reach out to the team or you can reach out to me. Just slide in my DMs. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you then decide you want to buy one of these things, it's bit by bit in the promo code, and that will give you $10 off your purchase. And I promise you, you are not going to regret it. This thing is fucking amazing. Anyway, enough shilling. Enjoy the show. Hello.
There we are, we're cooking on gas now.
There we are. Always a technical issue with me. I think that's probably my side. Sometimes these links just don't...
No, it was me. I've got a little knob to turn the volume up so I can actually hear you, and I didn't turn that up, so... That's probably it.
There we are. How's the travels?
I haven't actually started yet. I managed to put it all off. So I'm just going to sort of shoot out the door. That's why I wanted to start a little bit earlier.
Okay, no worries.
Because the internet's, going to be intermittent, isn't it? Inevitably. No matter how good it always works when you're out and about, usually, as soon as you need to do anything meaningful, it's destined to break and not work.
I have the same at my home, so I never know what's best, to be honest. But yeah, it's really good to talk to you.
Yeah, man, you too.
Looking forward to this one, and it's just dawned on me it's our 12th block for 21ism now, so
wow,
yeah, it's a big block for us. It's just gone so quickly.
No, it's great. I mean, the site and the people you've had on there, I feel I've got a bit of imposter syndrome really, because they're all brilliant.
Well, I have been looking through your GitHub and all the things that you've been doing, and I think that you're being a bit hard on yourself there. You've got some incredible projects here, and just the sheer
They've
amount
started
of
to,
stuff.
exactly. They've started to accumulate now, It's like, which I quite like.
Yeah.
But then there's a problem in maintenance. Then if as a responsible developer would create a project and then spend years maintaining it and improving it, whereas I have a tendency to prototype and make something and then just leave it and run away and do something else, which isn't the best practice, really.
Is that the bit you enjoy then? Is to like the start of a project and really getting your teeth in and creating? Is that the bit you enjoy most?
Yeah. I get a sort of bee in my bonnet. I get an itch. It needs to be scratched. I think of something and I really want it to exist. And then if I can't get someone else to convince someone else to try and make it, then sometimes you're just in that position where you're like, okay, bollocks, I'm going to make this thing myself now. And then you just sort of muscle through it and get it done. And also I've got this like innate paranoia that I think when you're young, you have a lot of good ideas which kind of come to you in a big flood. And then as you get older, those ideas come to you less and less. And quite often you use ideas you had that when you were younger. And I've always kind of got this, because I'm no spring chicken. I'm getting to get this fear that I'm going to start, the well's going to start emptying, going dry. And I also think that if you like massage that part of your brain which comes up with good ideas and encourage it and nurture it, then obviously it's going to work more. So I don't like, if an idea's popped into my head, I don't like just sort of ignoring it and then focusing on others, stuff. I like trying to work through it and make it, because one day I will just run out of ideas, and then I can live off then I can go back and maintain all my projects.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you'll have enough. You've got quite a lot of projects on the go here, and they're all bits that really interest me, because I first was like, I knew you were working with LN bits, and I was like, oh, well, this is going to be really interesting to learn some more on there. And then I started looking through GitHub. It seems to me you're someone who particularly likes hardware. Am I right?
I mean, I just started with the hardware stuff because you see something and you think, well, that can be done better. So I remember going to a Lightning hack day, and this is sort of at the same time where I had a little bit more time on my hands because I'd finished teaching. So I had more access to more time. And I went to a Lightning hack day in Berlin, and I think it was the first like proper Bitcoin event I'd been to. And they're very like maker centric. And there was a sweep machine there with a QR code, and you'd scan the QR code and it'd take you to a website. And then on the website, you would like pay an invoice. And then once you paid the invoice, you could get the sweets to come out of the machine. And I saw lots of people trying to use it by getting their wallets out and scanning the piece of paper, rather than scanning the piece of paper with a regular QR code scanner and then going to a website. So I thought, well, ideally there would be and the other thing was as well, actually, the sweep machine had like a full node on it. And I thought that seemed silly too. I was like, you don't want full nodes in everything. You want these to be kind of like secondary devices and then a primary device as a node. So you'd have your sweep machines talking to it. So I started playing around with microcontrollers and like generating invoices on little screens for the sweep machine. And then just kind of, it's all sort of snowballed from there. And really, as soon as you start making stuff, it offshoots, doesn't it? And then you can just follow the paths. And
well, you say, doesn't it? I have to say, I don't build, I break. We're on we're on opposite ends of the spectrum here, right? I sort of test things, break them, then need help from everyone in the world, and eventually get things working. That's
but eventually get things working. That's the point. So like the little e-paper screen I used for my sweep machine, which was like a secondary device. So I had a little microcontroller on it, and it could ask a node for an invoice and then put the invoice on a little e-paper. I think getting it to generate a QR code, because I couldn't find any at that time. I couldn't find any libraries which were good enough to be able to generate. So I had to sort of try and write it raw. It probably took me on and off like 4 months to get the QR code on a screen, because I didn't know what I was doing. I'm not a developer, so I was having to kind of learn on the job, and then just I went to a couple of conferences, a couple of hack events. And I would just like progress a little bit more by picking people's brains. And then when you learn more skills, you just kind of like everything, more doors kind of open to you. So, I mean, that's where the word hacking comes from, isn't it? It's from literally just hacking away at a keyboard to make things, to getting a bit of software or whatever, hardware, and hacking away at it and to get it to do something else, and eventually does something else, and hopefully that something else is useful and not a bug. So yeah, I think that's kind of the spirit of things, isn't it? You just tinker away, break it, get it working, learn, improve.
Yeah, it is fun. It's fun when it works, and also the process of going through it. I think some people have more of that sort of engineering mindset and enjoy putting the puzzle pieces together and actually enjoy the ride of making something, breaking something, and fixing something more than others. It seems that you do a lot of it. You said you're not a developer. What was it that brought you into this, and were you already a technical person? Or
I was always kind of interested in computers and things, and perhaps in another life I would have done more computer based. I would have had a more computer based background, but I'm glad that I didn't, because I had 15 years of a very rewarding teacher career as a design and technology teacher, and I taught a little bit of IT, and then we had I was quite pally with within design and technology, the subject you have electronics, so I would quite often cover lessons for electronics teachers, and I work specifically with kids with like severe behavioral difficulties and special units, and something like electronics, where it's very kinesthetic, very physical, and rewarding, and you feel like you've achieved something. You get a real buzz. That was a very useful tool for us to work with. Some of the kids we were working with, and it would make them they sit still and solder something quite happily, and get some LEDs to turn on or whatever. So I had a very rudimentary understanding of electronics, and I'd done some computer stuff as well. Like I could spin up a WordPress website, for example, or so pretty basic. I'd hacked into a plugin at some point and got it to do something else in PHP. But it's just time. Like I didn't have time when I was teaching, and then I decided to take because the unit where I was working, we had a lot of downward pressure from because it was during the austerity stuff, and the sort of provision which we were providing. So it was like 1-to-1, 2-to-1 is quite expensive for local government. So we kind of get all those services got the squeeze. And at that point, I was like, we were in a position where I was able to take a little bit of time off. And then I just thought, well, I've got an opportunity now, and I don't know whether this is fleeting and whether it's going to last very long. I've always thought I'd be quite good at doing technical stuff and making things. So I'm just going to give it a go. I'm just going to see if I can, and also, I always enjoyed kind of like coming up with ideas and stuff. So I thought I've now got the opportunity where I'm not doing something. I don't have to do something every day. I can just do something original. I can do whatever I want. So I then sat down and started trying to make stuff, and it snowballed. So I made the Sweet Machine, and then I realized with that same microcontroller and e-paper screen, I could get a keypad, and then I could plug the keypad in, like a cheap 50p keypad membrane thing from Amazon or AliExpress or something. I could plug that in, and then I could input a number, press the hashtag, and then get it to generate the invoice. So there you are, you have a point of sale then. And then I was like, I went through that kind of R&D thing of the e-paper screen, as cool as e-paper is, and as much as just as lovely as as a technology is, it's really bad in low light. So we tried to use the point of sale in like a bar, and it just didn't work. So it was too dark. And for some reason, Lightning wallets, they don't turn on the like your normal QR code scanner if it's in the dark. Your normal 3.2 star crappy QR code scanner off the Play Store, if it's in the dark, it will turn on your torch on your phone. But for some reason, Lightning wallets don't do that. So I thought, okay, now I need like something with a backlight. And sort of experimented with solutions for that, and eventually I came up with like a little TFT screen using that, and then I found the M5 stack, which has a so what was cool about the DIY version was it's very cheap, so I got it down to about $8 for the point of sale to make it, and it's quite a nice workshop too. But then I found this off-the-shelf solution by M5 Stack called the M5 Stack Faces Kit, where you can have like a keypad and a screen, and it's all kind of built into a thing, into a little unit. And it even comes with a little dock. You can just stick it on and it will charge, and the dock's magnetic. So it's absolutely perfect for a bar. So I managed to get that in room 77. Christian Mutual helped me get that in room 77, where they're accepting payments. And and it was battle tested, like it had a lot of transactions go through it, and the thing worked well. So that's the M5 Stack Sats project, which was on my repo as well. And then there were a bunch of some more problems. So it was like that worked well, but then the owner Jorg said it's working so well, he's getting all these transactions into his node, and he doesn't know where they're from, what they're for. So he needs the ability to have to download a CSV file just so he can pay his taxes. So he needed the ability to do that. Also, I had when I was developing the M5 Stack Sats, I had to make like 5 different versions, like one for LND, one for Lightning D, one for OpenNode, one for LMPay, one for and someone made one for the BTC Pay server thing. And I was thinking, this is crazy. Like, why can't I have a piece of middleware software which connects to all these funding sources, and then I just connect to the middleware software, and it doesn't matter what funding source is underneath it. So that's kind of like one of the ideas so there was like the ability to have, download a CSV, and the ability to be able to have some sort of middleware connecting to a funding source. And then the other thing I thought was, instead of a keypad, I can plug in a coin acceptor. So I plug in a coin acceptor to my little microcontroller, and I put coins in, and then it sends pulses to the microcontroller, and then I can generate at that point, LNUR withdraw, which is like a faucet thing that had been developed. So I could generate an LNUR withdraw, somebody could scale it, and they could get the funds. But in order to make an ATM like that, the ATM needs like admin access to your wallet. It needs to be able to take all the spend from your wallet, essentially. So I want a limited amount of money in my wallet. But as it was at that point, LND, I suppose you had LND Hub actually with LND by Igor and Blue Wallet. So that's the exception. But OpenNode, Lightning D, LMPay, a bunch of other wallets, they didn't have the ability to have accounts, like multiple accounts. And I was like, well, I just want a wallet with like 50 quid in, and I can just top it up. So that was the other idea for LMBits, was to have multiple accounts too. So that's LMBits kind of came. It's all. I mean, it's not divine inspiration. I'm a genius. Whatever. Like comes up with a great idea. It's trying to make something, and then just finding all these stumbling blocks and hurdles, and then trying to find a solution for the stumbling blocks and hurdles, and that all just happened to be wrapped up in a nice piece of software, basically. The other thing was the extensions in LMBits. So, and I've sort of hopped from hardware to LMBits here quite quickly, but we can go back to hardware in a minute.
Yeah, do you mind just doing a bit of an overview for LNBits for anyone who's listening and hasn't really dived in deeply? That might be quite helpful.
So it basically does all that stuff. Like you can quickly spin up an LNBits server, connect it to a funding source, and then you can generate like multiple wallets through a GUI. Each wallet has, and users as well, actually. Each wallet has its own API keys. So I can have a wallet just for my ATM, and it's only got access to the amount of funds it's got access to in that wallet, basically. And this is middleware, so it sits on top of your funding source. The other thing was, like as I said, WordPress, I played around with WordPress in the past, and although it's obviously terrible code, people hate the code base. What's genius about it is the plugin system. So you have a very simple blog, and then you develop it in any direction you want to develop it in. If you want to make a shop, you download WooCommerce. You want to make a forum, you download some, community thing, street videos, you want to download some other plugin. And there's niche plugins, there's more complex plugins. And in fact, very fitting today, one of the first pieces of software I made on Lightning Network was something called the Sinclair faucet. This was a couple of years ago. This was when LNUR withdraw was first kind of came about. So the ability to your phone to do like get and post requests, your wallet, your Lightning wallet on your phone to do a get and post request. Which means that, you don't have to just scan an invoice. You can scan essentially a URL, and then your wallet will go to that URL, and that URL might give an invoice, or it might say generate, to your wallet, now generate an invoice for, 100 sats. Your wallet can do that, give them the invoice, and they'll pay it. For the user, it's just a case, you get a static QR code, you can scan it, and then boom, you can have funds pop into your wallet. Or you can scan it and say, yes, I want to pay X amount, and then pay the static QR code. Anyway, so LNUR withdraw was the thing. I really liked the concept, and I've been thinking about this concept for such a long time. So it existed, that was great. So I made a faucet called the Sinclair faucet, which is fitting because today is a day, in fact, where Clive Sinclair, who was based in honor of, he died today. So there we are. So the Sinclair faucet allowed you to put in an amount, put in like how many intervals you wanted and how much time between each interval. and then you paid an invoice, and then it generated a QR code, and every X amount of time, that QR code would spit out some sats for somebody to get, like a faucet. And that was like a fun thing, because you could just put up a QR code on Twitter, and then people could like start, sucking sats from it. Obviously, sooner or later, people made like bots to do it, whatever. So, but for a short period, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And like I had to do like a lot of work connecting that to a funding source, doing all these things to be able to build Sinclair faucet on top of it. And I thought, well, this is silly. Like, I want something where I can just take the functions, the Sinclair faucet functions, not all the base stuff of it connecting to a funding source, getting an invoice, paying an invoice, whatever. I want like a piece of software where I can just build extensions for it. So I can sit down, have a goofy idea, build an extension for that piece of software, and then it will do all the other Lightning stuff underneath it for me. And that's kind of the concept behind LMBits as well, is it's got this extension framework, which is a lot like WordPress in that you can extend it out into any direction you want. Some of them are very niche extensions. Some of them are quite generalized extensions, which allow you to do things. So for example, you have a node running, and you're waiting for offers to finally make it, Rusty's offers to finally make it on a protocol level, but you don't want to wait for that, so you want to just be able to pay static QR codes. Well, all Lightning wallets pretty much support something called LNURL Pay, which is the ability to have a static QR code which you scan, and then it says give me an invoice. Sorry, it says it gives you an invoice, and then you pay the invoice, essentially. Well, in LMBits, you can do that with an extension. There's an extension called LNURL Pay, and you can go in, you can generate an LNURL Pay, and it takes care of all the, the request stuff between so when your phone connects to it, it'll take care of all the request stuff for you. And you can connect it to any funding source. So now on LND, on Seed Lightning, on whatever, you've got the ability to do LNURL Pays. The other thing is well, there's loads of extensions. I mean, I think one of the coolest extensions, one of the first ones we made, was just a simple point of sale, like a shareable point of sale. And it looks like a point of sale, looks really nice on a phone. You can open it in a phone, and it's just, it's phone ready, and you just got a keypad, you press the keypad, and then it generates an invoice, someone can pay it. It's denominated in fiat, so you can give it to the person working in your cafe or bar. They don't need to know anything about Bitcoin. They just have someone come in and say, I want to buy a beer. They say, okay, you want to pay Bitcoin? Okay, we've got this, we've got this thing, this link we can open, and you can pay in Bitcoin, and then it goes to the bar owner's wallet. What's cool about it is it's shareable. So if you press the star button, you get a little QR code, and then everybody in the bar can scan that QR code with a normal QR code scanner, open up that URL, and now they've got that same point of sale on their phone. So and it has no connection with, like, you can't get any information. So it has no read keys, has no nothing. All you can literally do is generate an invoice from an unknown wallet, So for your bar staff, it's great. So in Guatemala, IBEX, which is a bank, they do banking solutions. They've got a service now for El Salvadorians who have to accept Bitcoin, but they'd rather have the fiat because it's stable. They can, where they just literally give them, they didn't give them an LMBits wallet or anything. They've got an LMBits server installed, and they just give them one of these point of sales. And then the service, like the hairdressers or the shop, they use that point of sale to accept Bitcoin. And then every couple of days, they turn to IBEX and they say, oh, can we have the cash? And IBEX just gives them the cash. And then they take a small percentage for the service. So that's cool. I mean, there's a whole business model there based off one tiny little extension. And then all the back end stuff is taking care of the LMBits server is taking care of the funding source and all that, which is, again, cool. Like, if this is another issue in the bar, is you're getting a lot of payments coming in, and suddenly your channels go off whack, and for a short period you want to switch to a custodial solution like LMPay. LMPay is wonderful, or OpenNode, where you'll need to switch to a custodial solution while you fix your node and balance your channels and whatever else you need to do. And you can do that with LMBits. You can literally just change a variable, and now it's using a different funding source. But for the end user, for the person in the bar, it has no effect. They can still just generate an invoice, pay an invoice, check to see if the invoice has been paid. So the ability to have easily spin up lots of different wallets, the ability to have bank be able to download a CSV, avoid transactions, that sort of stuff. The ability to have extensions as well, and also the last thing was the Insta wallet. So it's quite nice. It's all in browser, and it's kind of more of a thing now. Like there's Coin OS, which does this as well. But at the time, this was quite a breakthrough. Not many people had seen it. Like the web browser can access your phone camera and can scan a QR code. So you can just use the whole wallet system in your phone browser. So you don't need to download any software. So that's useful for like meetups, for conferences where you want to, or whatever, or demos. You want to give people a Lightning experience, a Bitcoin experience, but you don't want them to have to like download a piece of software, like convince them to download a piece of software. Even though it's a legitimate piece of software off the App Store, people are always a bit reluctant. For some reason, they're less reluctant to go to some dodgy URL. And then they can instantly, you can give them sats, and then they can instantly go and pay for, buy some sweets from the sweet machine, top up their wallet on the ATM, and they can start having experiences with the Insta wallet too. So it does loads of stuff. It's flipping brilliant. But now I'm doing less hardware because obviously the LM Bits is the ability to make extensions, because it doesn't take long. It's very appealing, and it is quite distracting. I think the last extension I did was I just got an LNURL pay and an LNURL withdraw and stuck them together. So you could create an LNURL pay, so a static QR code where you can pay and you can set a limit. So, between 10 and 10,000 Satoshis, say. And then if you pay, because the way LNURL works, you get a receipt in your wallet, which has you can put text in, you can specify text or URL. So it gives you back a URL. You click on that URL and then it opens up a page, and you might win, twice your money. So it's a gambling in a QR code.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Sats dice. Yeah, it's a bit naughty, but it's but I like the concept. So if you imagine like a tube station, and you just put up a QR code for like a 10,000 sat, bet, and people, if they've got the money and they stood at the tube station, they could scan it, they could make a little gamble, they might get the money. I hate gambling, by the way, but again, it's one of those examples of I had an idea for something, it was such an itch, I needed to scratch it, I needed it to exist, so I made the thing. I've disabled it by default. That's so you have to go and enable it in the back end to get it up on your LM-Bit server. But so there's gazillions of extensions to all sorts of funky things. More recently, I realized that as obviously for some reason I've got an interest in point of sales. I realized that you can have an offline point of sale using LNURL Pay. So I've made a point of sale. One of the great things about LNURL as well is you get a smaller QR code. It doesn't have to be one of those crazy Lightning invoices, so I can use a smaller, cheaper bit of hardware, nice little screen on it. Again, a keypad, you input the number in fiat, you press hashtag, and then it generates an LNURL Pay. Now, what it does is it has a secret inside the point of sale. Okay, the person who owns the point of sale, the merchant, the shop owner, whatever, he goes to LM Bits. There's an LNURL point of sale extension. They go there, they create a new point of sale. It gives them a secret. They give that secret to the physical point of sale. Right now, when it generates that QR code for the customer to pay, it passes an encrypted copy of that PIN. It uses that secret to encrypt a PIN, a random PIN, and then passes it to the customer. The customer's wallet connects to the LM-Bit server, asks for an invoice to pay. Once the invoice has been paid, the LM-Bit server sends back to the customer a decrypted version of that PIN. So now the customer has a decrypted. So now they've got a PIN 3764, whatever. And then the merchant with the point of sale, they press the hash on the point of sale, and it shows them the exact same PIN. And what that means is that the point of sale doesn't need to be online, which is dead useful. So if you,
well, especially with some of the places that Bitcoin is going to be going,
Well, I mean, just not even that. I mean, how many times have you been in a bar and they've gone, "Oh, the point of sale's not working." Oh, and you're like, what? Basically, like those point of sales. Obviously, we've used them with cards, but more and more people are obviously using point of sales with their phones. So one of the devices needs to be online, doesn't it? Either the point of sale or the person, the customer. Well, as the customers are online, and as generally Bitcoin customers are online, it makes sense that you can have an offline point of sale. And like you say, it's great for outside. And this is what's cool about this is you can use it in like a busy supermarket, because another extension we have in LM Bits is offline shop, which is a very similar concept. In fact, it's kind of where I got the idea from. It's a very similar concept, except the customer gets a word, and then the merchant has a word list, like giraffe, hippo, plant, whatever. And say the customer then, when they pay, they get the word giraffe. They say that to the merchant, and the merchant says, "Oh yeah, okay, that's the next in my list." The next person who comes along, they pay and they say, "Oh, plant," and then the merchant says, "Yeah, that's the next in my." So for a small merchant selling cans of Coke or whatever, as long as they've got that word list with like 20 words on, it'd be pretty hard and pointless for the customers to hack that system. So it's a way for them to have an offline shop. Just a printed QR code which people can scan, pay, and then they just get a word back. So this is a very similar concept, except with that concept, obviously the merchant needs that word list, and it doesn't really scale very well. Whereas with the physical point of sale, because you're just generating a PIN, like no one needs to remember any word lists or anything. So you could use it in like a busy supermarket. And what's cool about it is you feel the speed, because obviously a normal point of sale has to do a request, get an invoice, or do a request and connect to a bank, traditional legacy point of sale. And there is lag in the experience. Whereas with this thing, you put in a number, you press the thing, boom, there's a QR code, it's like instant. It's amazing. So yeah, that's the thing but that also, so there's an example of me building an extension for a very specific need, which is what's great about LM Bits. I mean, I'll PR the extension on the LM Bits repo. Hopefully enough people will say, yeah, we want this in the core package. But if they don't, then it's just, an extension I could use, or an extension a business running that particular service could use. So you can have like niche proprietary even extensions which you build and you don't share with everybody, or you can have more generalized extensions which people will use. It's great.
It's really clever. So it's very just modular in terms of you just choose what you want and everything. Is it kind of like bucketed off so that, like you say, if someone doesn't like the idea of one, they don't use that, they just take the bits they want? And
it's got that. So currently, and this is great because this is like a scale problem. The extensions are their own self-contained little folders where the database and everything is generated, within the folder. And it has its own, each extension has its own API, its own little front-end pages in its own little folder. So you can literally just delete the folders you don't want, or you can disable from, your setup file, your config file, or you can, or you have to enable the extension anyway within your LM Bits server when you're as a user. So you just pick the extensions you want. Now we've sort of hit the point where we've got like 20 odd extensions, and it's kind of disorientating to when you see all those extensions. So we're at the point now where we need kind of a WordPress experience, where we need you search for a plugin. It has recommended plugins or supported plugins, and then it has recommended plugins or supported plugins. But so that's something we need to kind of figure out. But we built LM Bits with that in mind, that hopefully will be a problem, which we've got, and we've got that now. So, but it is still beta. Let me put a caveat in there. It is still beta, and there are some bugs as well. So there's 3 frameworks we use: Quasar and Vue. That's kind of like for the front end stuff to make it look pretty, and then the API is delivered using Quart, which is I'll go into it because there might be some people listening who are interested. It's like an asynchronous version of Flask, which is a very nice vanilla Python way to build an API. Because Quart isn't as battle tested as we thought it was, for some more complex functionality. So, for example, when you generate an invoice, say in an extension like Offline Shop, you generate an invoice in Offline Shop. It has a little tag which says it's for offline shop, and then it creates a listener, and that listener just waits to see if that invoice is being paid. And then when it's being paid, it does some stuff. It does stuff. It updates the balance. Blah blah blah. Well, the way Quart works is if you have lots of these listeners all waiting and listening, it kind of gets clogged up, and that's okay because what should then happen is you would have like error handling. So if there's an error, it will then just restart this little sort of nursery of listeners. But currently, it just kills the Quart, and you have to restart. So that's something you get if you're running like a really busy server. It starts to happen on your LM Bits server, and it requires like a 1-2 seconds restart. What we're doing is we're moving. I mean, they're all problems which have solutions. So we're moving away from Quart, which is a shame because we did like it, and I think it's kind of oversold because this limitation isn't really talked about. But anyway, there's a very good similar Python API framework called Fast API. So we're currently in the process of switching away from Quart to Fast API. Hopefully that switch, we've got Core running and we've got the offline shop extension working actually because it's one of the more complicated ones. So now it's a case of us going through and switching over all the other extensions. Thankfully, we're still at a point where there's like 20 extensions, so it's kind of a lot of work, but there's not like, it's not like WordPress where you'd have to like suddenly change, everyone would have to change their extensions. That's why we're beta, I suppose, isn't it? So hopefully that will be the bug which kind of gets us out of beta this will fix it because Fast API is far more battle tested. What's also great about Fast API is the Raspberry Blitz. They're making a GUI, so a bit like the Umbrella experience. Yeah. In fact, I think they wanted to use the Umbrella GUI, but I think there was some FOSS issues around or something. I don't know. But so they're making a GUI. They're also using Fast API. And I have heard that Spectre are doing some sort of web thing where they're going to use Fast API too. So as a design decision for us to choose Fast API, we're going to have a bunch of projects all using the same framework, which means we can pull talent together. So the lead dev helping us convert from Quart to Fast API now is a guy called Fusion44, highly underfollowed on Twitter, so please follow him. So he's helping us convert over from Quart to Fast API. He's also working on the Raspberry Blitz stuff, so already we're like sharing talent, which is great. It kind of brings projects together.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah, so that's really exciting. We also have there's a version you can try of LMBits called lmbits.com because it's not a company. It's nothing. It's not like a professional outfit. It's literally just me and a couple of other people running this on the server with our own node on there. We don't provide a stable service. So if we've got some like new weird thing we want to do with funding sources, like we'll experiment directly on lmbits.com specifically because we don't. There's people started to put a lot of money on there, and we were like, if we go there, we want to make a business, we want to tackle the regulatory moat, we want to, we want to do it properly. Like we don't want to just spin this thing up and then let people use it as a stable service because that can be very risky. So it's a playground. If you want to experiment with the software, go to lmbits.com. If it's not working, then so's your right. Run it yourself. But you're more than welcome to go on there and just play with it. But please don't leave any funds on there because it's like the custodial dilemma, which is people leave funds on your thing and then you're like, okay, am I a custodian forever now? Do I have to look after these funds for this person in case they randomly might turn up? So hopefully at some point in LMBits, the LMBits server, LMBits software, we will have like a burn down option in the variables, which will like, if funds become static for like a couple of weeks or something, it'll start eating away at them, like 1% every couple of days or something.
Right.
And that would be cool for people running LMBits servers, perhaps as a revenue stream, people forgetting their money, which they've left on the servers. And there's a bunch of other things we want to do to Core as well to kind of bring in revenue streams for people running LMBits servers. But yeah, so by all means, go on lmbits.com, experiment, but it's not a stable service and don't leave money on there, please. I'll take it one day, I'll just run off. I'll give up on everything. I'll just quit everything. I'll just take money.
Don't be reckless, people. But yeah, so when this does happen and when it's available on Raspberry Blitz and on Spectre, you were saying, can you talk?
No, it's not. It's not that they're making separate pieces of software which use Fast API as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But currently, Raspberry Blitz is a one-click install on. LMBits is a one-click install on the Raspberry Blitz. So you can literally just click a button. Same with Umbrella, and that's super useful. There's sort of like teething issues, I think with Umbrella it runs like an older version, whereas currently, I mean that's probably on our side actually because we're beta and we're a bit reckless with versioning. We just kind of say I'll run the latest master to people. Sorry, not master primary. We do really need to stop making putting tags in for versioning. So but anyway, so Umbrella sometimes has an older version Raspberry Blitz pulls the latest version.
So if I went on my Raspberry Blitz now, I could then have LN bits running,
Yeah.
and it would be running on my Blitz.
Yeah,
and
connected to your node. Yeah.
Connected to my node. That's cool.
And
Okay.
Raspberry Blitz also gives you a Tor address. So you can actually just like share that Tor address out, and people can start, if you want to, people can start using it as a service. We do. So there's a, this is the other thing, like in some of those one-click install solutions. So I don't know if you remember WordPress, but years ago, you used to have like a sort of text file config form you'd have to fill out. And then eventually that turned into like a GUI, like a form on a web page you could fill out. Well, we need to do the same thing. That's one of the things which LMBits needs is like a lot of variables and a lot of tweaking to the server is done through a config file. But we ideally this will, because obviously you have these one-click install options, it'd make it a lot easier for people if there was like a GUI where like an admin extension where you could change variables. So if you create a user in your LMBits install, you can take the user ID and then you can put it in the variable, the config, and you can be limited. So only you can use it. If you don't do that, then you might find that people start using you as a custodian. They can't take your funds. All they can do is deposit funds, and then the funds are there, and then they can just burn down the funds which are in their wallet. LMBits won't let you take anymore. So so that's something which for those solutions we kind of need next. Basically, like it's time. We only have a limited amount of time. Hopefully, at some point, we've kind of explored with LMBits.com, like for it to kind of get some sort of revenue stream, maybe some VC or something, or I don't know, like make it like a legit service, and then that would then fund development on all that stuff, because they were quite time-consuming tasks, and the more fun thing is just to come up with some goofy extension rather than work on that core stuff. We did actually, I'm silly for not mentioning this earlier on, we did get a grant from the Human Rights Foundation for LMBits.
Oh, awesome. Very nice.
So we got 25 million sats, and that's paying. So there's a contributor to LMBits. Sorry, there's a contributor to LMBits, Tal, and he actually came up with the point of sale extension. And he's constantly, he's always been a contributor. He's always been helpful, and he's so now that pays for him for a good few months to work on some of that boring stuff like the admin extension, and it's not boring, still fun, but it's less fun than random goofy extensions. And the admin extension, and also doing like housekeeping, so keeping an eye on the repo, tackling issues people may have, support as well on like the Telegram group. We got loads of great people offering support on the Telegram group, and we have a tip jar as well. That we tend to do. There's a few of us who sort of like distribute the tips around all the people who will like help out in the Telegram group, and we find that's really nice for people to be able to get a little bit some sats as well. So so we got the Human Rights Foundation grant. That was great. That'll pay for Tal for a few months to keep it chugging away. When all of us, the rest of us, have got busy RL stuff to do. But hopefully we'll get some other sustainable development scenario, i.e. LMBits.com being a stable service. But that involves, time-consuming things like meetings and all that stuff. So I don't know how long it'll be until that happens. Or maybe LMBits.com, maybe we create it revenue streams so it'll actually fund itself in some way. I don't know. We got to kind of wait and see.
Sometimes it's one of those things where you come up with the idea, it's either good or it isn't, and then after a while you get to a point where you're like, okay, now we need to fund this, and it's kind of, you have to know that the idea works first, and it sounds like that's definitely working.
This is it. I mean,
stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not like a lot of people will think, okay, how do I come up with an idea which I then go get funding for?
Exactly.
Whereas us, we're like reluctantly going, oh, for fuck's sake, because there are some people.
Right, you can swear.
There are some VCs interested in it. There are some people who are interested in it, and we're like, oh, for God's sake, we now have to like tackle this thing. We have to. So that's a nice position to be in. I don't know if it's the right thing to do with it. I don't know, because what we don't want personally. Like we're free spirits, like me, Fiat Jaff, we're probably the people who have been working on it. He works on it part-time. He's got a full-time job too. He doesn't work he works on it in his spare time. He's got a full-time job as well. We're sort of limited on time, and the time we do have, like we're quite free-spirited and we just want to work on what we want to work on. So
we'll be tied down.
Yeah. So I actually had a meeting with a VC, and they asked, like, will you be able to work on nanobits full time? And I was like, well, I think it needs less of me and like more of like a business manager or whatever else. Anyway, so yeah, that's something which will hopefully exist in the future. And we'll figure out some way in which we can do that, and we can still have time to be like, because it's like a research and development tool. It's like a experimentation tool, so it's always kind of on the Ellen bits. Like, it's easy to be on the cutting edge, like I'm using it for my point of sale thing. I made that gambling thing with the offline shop thing. Like, we can do like really experimental research on there. Maybe that's the way for it to go. Maybe like some research council can offer a grant, and then we can formalize that as a way of sustaining development. I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, we do have a lot of great contributors as well.
Hey Ben, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. What happened? Was it like a feedback thing? Was it?
Yeah, just literally went "Wah!" and then just cut off. I have no idea what happened.
They're the alphabet people. They're after us. It's the CIA.
Well, that's what I did wonder. I thought, maybe Ellen Bits is just going to be too successful. They thought, fuck, let's get rid of this bloke.
Yeah, quick, cut him off, man. It's so good for the ego, isn't it? Having like an hour where you can just talk about yourself,
Well, it depends. It depends if you've actually got good stuff to talk about. For you, I assume it's very good. For me, it's just an hour of me waffling about what I've broken that week. So
no, this 21ism is great. It's such a nice platform, and it looks fantastic as well. So South Bankter's involved in this. He's one of my favorite Bitcoiners.
He's one of my favorite Bitcoiners as well. He's an incredible bloke.
Yeah, he's cool. He's super cool. Yeah, I haven't seen him for a while, actually, because he used to come to the... I don't want to dox the guy, so I better stop talking.
Yeah, you've always got to be careful, haven't you? But yeah, I mean, he's still about. I've had the pleasure of catching up with him a few times recently, and he's fantastic, and it's great to be able to work with him as much as I do.
I think he's going to the Bitcoin Wales. He's spoken about this publicly, so I can talk about it. There's a Bitcoin Wales meetup, isn't there, at the end of the month? Oh, wait there, sorry.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry for that noise.
That's all right. Yeah, that's... when is it? End of this month? Whereabouts in Wales?
It's in Cardiff. It's actually...
Okay.
I think it's one of the bigger meetups, the Bitcoin Wales meetup. We got... They set up a Bitcoin, not Bitcoin Cash, the other one, Bitcoin SV, whatever that is. They set up a meetup for that because I think because Cardiff, it's amazing actually how small the meetups are in the UK. Even in London, I always find they're really quite small. Whereas in Cardiff, we get like a decent amount of people, like 40 people,
Oh, really?
Sort of quite average, yeah. Sometimes more. We've had like 100. And because of that, we then got targeted, because these BSV people, they're like, okay, this is where the Bitcoin meetup, this is where the busy Bitcoin meetup's happening. So we actually had some BSV meetups there. And I went to one of them, and it was amazing because it was full of Craig Wright's lawyers were all there. And there was actually a point in the meeting where Craig Wright's patent lawyer said she didn't know who Satoshi was. It could be a he or a she. And I was like, dude, you work for Craig Wright.
The level of incompetence is astounding.
Like, why have you just said this to me? And it was funny because my mate, because I went there and I was like, let's just keep them in check. And we did. They had like a presentation, and then they had block size, like infographic. And in it, they had like a 1 megabyte block for Bitcoin. And then while the guy was talking, he like corrected himself and said, no, actually, because of SegWit, it's more like blah, blah, blah. And corrected himself. So I actually think it's important that people don't just shun these things, that they go to them and keep them in check. And then a lot of the people who are there might be noobs and they just wander in. And like, if you can say to them in a non-preachy way, oh yeah, do you know this is a thing of Bitcoin, and actually the real Bitcoin is this thing over here. I think that's quite a good thing to do. Anyway, the guy I was with, he's another Bitcoiner from Cardiff. At one point, he stood up because it was just a room full of people in suits, basically people who are being employed. They're under contract. Yeah. And the Bitcoiner I was with, he stood up at one point. He went, "You lot should come to our Bitcoin meetup. All you lot are being paid to be here. At our meetup, no one's being paid." I was like, "Oh man, it's so embarrassing." I was like, "Dude, sit down."
Yeah, but you don't know. He might just save someone's skin because The thing is, I've listened to a few like conversations with these BSVers and any other shitcoin really. And obviously, when you're paying for marketing and you're paying to work out how to get into someone's head and make them think this is the best thing ever, if someone's not that technical and they don't really know what they're listening to, it's very easy for someone to be scammed like that. And like a lot of these people,
yeah.
they're very convincing con artists. That is their job, is to lie to people and make it convincing, and people do get wrapped up, and it is sad to see. It's just I think, well, how much time do we all have to spend like trying to explain to them and trying to help? Like I kind of think a lot of the time I just don't bother anymore, because I just think like,
oh yeah, I mean there is also the very good and actually I think it's a correct argument if you give them too much attention and they and it propagates. But what I'm saying is that if you have, it's a laugh. I want to go to like an Ethereum conference as well for the exact same reason, because it's just fun, like just to go.
Which is worse.
Just to go. Oh, I think. Oh, it's got to be BSV, crikey. At least like, well, if Ethereum's full of scam, there's a lot of scammers, but there's also some very talented front end dev types. That's why all the Ethereum stuff looks so good. It looks great. Who wanted too much of Bitcoin, and they're like Ethereum's built for impatient people. When Bitcoin was made, and before pre-Bitcoin, there was this promise of a digitally native currency which would have micropayments and blah blah blah, and socially scalable smart contracts, blah. And all that stuff is possible on Bitcoin. It's just it requires time to build it. Whereas people are impatient and they're like, no, we want those things now. But by being impatient, it's like any building project. By being impatient and then just trying to like jump over hurdles to get to the next thing, without dealing with the whatever the first thing first, then you end up building houses on sand. And that's what Ethereum community do. They have these great ideas for all sorts of like DAOs and all these cool stuff, and the house is built on sand, and ultimately all that stuff will be on Bitcoin. And I think people realize that more and more now, that Bitcoin's the safe, super, reserved, conservative piece of software. And then over time, like all that stuff will come to Bitcoin. But you just got to be patient. So Ethereum's for impatient people. But it's still got some talent in there.
It's come around at a time where people are particularly impatient. Like if you look at the rest of the world and how things are built, it is this move fast, break things. Like no one can wait for anything. Everyone wants results now. And, Bitcoin is so polar to that. It's so different. And I think a lot of people in tech especially, like they're used to everything just happening so quickly, and so they probably do look at Bitcoin, if you don't understand the fundamentals, if you don't understand quite how important this, the foundations have to be absolutely rock solid, and you cannot afford to make any mistakes. They probably do look at it and just go, oh, it's fucking boring, isn't it? And then you see well, it is, and then you see this shiny thing in Ethereum and people dancing around like fucking unicorns or something. You're like, wow, look at this, and they get dragged over there. So like you say, they'll come.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen on Lightning, I've tweeted this out, I think, and said a few things about this public, but like I have seen developers coming back from that world. So like the developers who wanted, for their project, they needed the utility of micropayments, and what, so they moved away from Bitcoin, or they needed in things to be settled quicker, so they moved away from Bitcoin. And now I'm seeing them coming back, because obviously Lightning Network offers that utility for their projects. So I'm seeing more and more projects coming back to Bitcoin, and then moving away, ditching their blockchains or whatever, and using Lightning Network. So that's very encouraging. And I think actually Lightning Network is very attractive to front end devs, because when you do make Bitcoin things, it's really scary. Like one of my hardware projects is the Bowser wallet, and it's like a hardware wallet which has like a Tetris game on it. So it looks like a little Tetris game, basically. But if you press like a button and put in a pin, you can open up a hardware wallet. and it's made for very limited funds. But say if you're having to cross a border, like you're a Syrian refugee, and you need to take some funds with you or whatever, and you want to weigh it to take it with you, where you're not going to get someone's not going to take it off you. But making that is dead scary, because people put sort of significant funds on there, and the crypto is pretty complicated, and there's lots of different like address formats, and you have to cater for all these different sort of technologies which are built up over the years, and then also all the low hanging fruit has kind of already been pinched. So whereas with Lightning Network, it's less scary. Like you just got a funding source, and you're just generating invoices, paying invoices, and checking if they've been paid, essentially, and then you can build stuff on top of it. Unless you want to get to more protocol-y type bits, you're building applications on top of it. And you don't have to, just because of the transaction sizes, you can be on chain, mainnet, and you can pay out 10 satoshis, a couple of satoshis for experiments. Like I've never used testnet in any of my developing. And you can on Lightning, because it's fine. It's only a few satoshis here and there. I mean, obviously, ask me that question again in the future, and I'm sure I'll kick myself. Yeah. So I think it's much more attractive to developers, and it's much easier to access. And also, I don't think there's this. Some people in the Bitcoin world are extremely helpful. And encouraging too, and nurturing. So someone I would think of off the top of my head is like Stepan Snygarev. He makes some wonderful libraries I've used. Like he's made a really great Python library for Bitcoin. He makes an excellent Arduino library, which I've used for my I use for the hardware wallet, in fact. And he's someone who, if you can ask a dumb question and he's not going to shoot you down, make you feel like an idiot. He's going to encourage you, and I think that's good. He encourages you to carry on, and you'll get there in the end, sort of thing. And I think that's why he's built up such a great community around the Spectre wallet. Yes, because of that, because he's like welcoming and nurturing and everything. But there is in Bitcoin, and it is the thing which has pushed a lot of developers away, pushed a lot of people away from Bitcoin as well. There is kind of a tech, and it might be to do with like protocol consensus, and it becoming a very obviously something which you only want gigabrains involved in. There has been a kind of techno. Actually, there's kind of been I wouldn't say actually from the protocol devs, the actual people working at a protocol level on Bitcoin, they're a bit like Stepan. They're just super excited about the technology, and they love it when people use it, and they like it when people ask them silly questions and whatever. They don't care. However, like the immediate layer beneath that, there's kind of a technocratic vanguard, like bit of an ego thing going on there. And I don't think it's particularly welcoming for developers. Whereas I don't think you get that in Lightning so much. I think in Lightning, people, they just, they like people just building stuff, rather than just talking hot. They want people making things, and they want to encourage that, and they want people to share like good ideas. And so I think it's a much more encouraging development environment.
It's a different culture, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I mean, and also
makes sense though.
Yeah, that kind of gatekeeping, vanguard, technocratic atmosphere, it might be a reaction to, all the forks of Bitcoin, and then people claiming that their fork was better than Bitcoin. It might be some sort of defense mechanism. But no, I will say, the Peter Wallers of this world, and the Newberries, they're great. I mean, and they act how other Bitcoiners should act too. But yeah, there's sort of a snootiness sometimes on the higher level Bitcoiners, which I don't think is good, encouraging for developers.
I suppose as well, when you're talking about Lightning, it's the change is there because it's layer 2. It's not like make or break stuff, and I guess that allows for some more freedom, and it's exciting. Like to see all the things that are happening so quickly. It was only a couple of years ago where it was like, I remember basically there was almost no Lightning nodes on the network. It was like so niche, and it just seems to be exploding. I think it's really cool. A lot of people aren't really into Lightning and have their issues with it, but I can't see how we do the things that we dream of without it. Like, it seems to me that
it's the
incredible things.
It's the payment rails, and rather controversially as well, it doesn't actually depend on Bitcoin. It could use something else. So in El Salvador, I like non-binary thinking. I don't think like good, evil kind of thinking. I don't think it's pretty unproductive. So I think some soft currencies some soft currencies have some useful functions, such as the ability to kind of keep it stable, the ability to create more of it if you need to in a crisis. But those functions, they get co-opted and obviously corrupted by officials, and then it becomes a lever of power. So you kind of want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you say, okay, well, let's just get rid of soft currencies, just have hard currencies. But no, actually, you then lose, society, modern society, we need fiscal stimulus. We need ways to create demand and aggregate demand, and the best ways to do that are through soft currencies. But I do believe that somewhere like El Salvador, it has this hard currency option, savings technology, which people can use, and they also have the USD. Now, for me, I would prefer some sort of stable coin on Liquid, which can also use Lightning Network, so it's interoperable, as an El Salvador dollar, something which is beyond the reach of the US government to take down. So some sort of federated model or something. I'm really excited and interested in that concept. I understand that it sounds a bit shitcoiny, but it's like where you've got Bitcoin. So the number one issue people have with Bitcoin is this volatility. The payment rails is fantastic,
and we're all drug dealers and destroying the planet.
But I mean, no, but functionally as a medium of exchange, obviously as a savings technology, it's wonderful. As a medium of exchange for your average El Salvadorian, who's might be on I don't know if it's average salary, but if they're on like $200 a month, if Elon Musk then tweets something and Bitcoin's price halves to $100. That's really bad for that person who's on $200 a month. And it will mean that they won't use it. They'll use USD. And I prefer for them not to use USD. So I would prefer, for El Salvador to have some control, collectively have some control over a soft currency. So anyway, you could theoretically use Lightning Network on such a system, on that. And so I think as a payment rails, no matter what happens, Lightning Network's here to stay. It works incredibly well. We're still barely sort of a viable product, I know it's been around for a few years, but it's still heavily underused. It's not used in huge production. So sorry, my phone's going off. Let me try to close that. It's not yet. So yeah, it's it's an incredibly useful, good, stable technology, and it will be the thing which the whole world uses, with Bitcoin underneath it, of course, and eventually in Star Trek Utopia, we'll have just a Bitcoin-backed value transfer, and we just have Bitcoin, the interplanetary, universal medium of exchange, whatever. However, on that road, I do think we'll have soft currencies, federated soft currencies, and other sort of assets and things issued, which can also be transferred and also use Lightning Network or make use of Lightning Network for payment rails.
It makes sense. I mean, like you said, a lot of people can be very black or white with this sort of stuff, but like you said, that there are certain situations where people don't want a savings technology. They just want something that's fairly stable right now because they're not actually able to save. So many people are just literally hand to mouth, and then it's like you say, it's if it does halve, which we've seen so many times, then it's like, oh, you can't feed your family then. Well, how good was that for you in this situation?
Exactly.
Not very.
No.
So it's easy to sit, if you are using Bitcoin as savings and say things like, oh yeah, everyone should just use Sats as the standard. But it will come. Yeah, it will come. It's just not there yet. So I'm not against these sort of stable coins and things because they actually serve purpose for now, but it's it'd be cool to see this sort of stuff on Lightning though.
Well, I mean, so within the Ethereum world, with all those impatient people, the MakerDAO, they have made that sort of DAO. I don't know too much about it, but from what I hear, it uses arbitration opportunities to keep a stable peg by having a vault, and that vault is controlled by the MakerDAO. Well, that vault could be controlled by a federation, like a liquid network federation, and it could have a similar sort of stable coin DAO on top. I think the game is you make the best so you make the best if soft currencies have lots of inherent issues and bugs, but they do have some useful redeeming features, you make the least crappy version of a soft currency, and then people can use that until we get to that, utopia where Bitcoin has so much liquidity in it that the price just stables somehow. If we get there, great. But until we get there, it seems to make sense to give people the option of the least crappy soft currency they can have access to. And then also, just like because we can, if you use Liquid Network and Liquid Network tokens, you can they have done it so you have Lightning on top of that, so you can use Lightning as the actual payment rails, which means you can then just fork things like LM bits and get LM bits running on it, and other wallets, and you can probably do some submarine swapping and between Bitcoin on chain and this Liquid DAO token thingy, theoretical thingy, whatever it is. My current thinking is that if all countries with central banks are exploring making digitally native currencies controlled and regulated by the central banks, then countries without central banks, smaller countries relying on other currencies, will start exploring these decentralized and federated technologies to build their own digitally native soft currencies. And then the question is, which direction do you want them to go in? And could it not be something which we use to kind of encourage people to use Bitcoin by using the same payment rails, and actually by using something which is leveraging Bitcoin security to keep it secure and stable on a more base layer? So that to me seems, the Chinese central bank, the Fed, the Bank of England, they're all exploring digitally native currencies. They're going to issue them at some point. And for smaller countries like El Salvador, maybe it's within their best interest to not try and create a central bank and then try and create a central bank controlled digital currency, but just use this technology which already exists to create something, some sort of soft currency. And I think that will chip away at imperialism and the sort of neoliberal control, which I think we're all into anyway, trying to sort of take, loosen that grip over monetary control. Yeah, exactly.
How confident are you generally in Bitcoin's ability to slowly take this power from the state around the world? Like, how likely do you see it that this vision that a lot of Bitcoiners have of basically taking back some control, because they have to be reined in, they can't just create value from creating no value, if that makes sense?
I think it 100%, but it wouldn't be something, look at the Great Depression, for example. You have a crisis of overproduction, and then countries just, if there's a gold standard, they'll just come off the gold standard, and they'll be pushed to do that because it's not within the interests of the savers, of the people with the money, to go off a gold standard. It's within the interests of the citizens. The citizens of a country will just push any country. If there's a crisis, can the government turn around to a crisis of overproduction like the Great Depression and say to the people, the starving masses, don't worry, because eventually, after a decade or so, we'll have more efficient markets and we'll all be better off for it? It's not going to happen. They're going to put in some crappy, centralized way of buffering that crisis. So yes, Bitcoin can take away and will take away the power of state over people by taking away their power over monetary supply and monetary control. But currently there does need to be some mechanism for buffering out some of that instability while you don't have, this utopian, whether it even exists, holy grail of perfectly self-regulating, markets. So we will certainly get there. There's I always like bringing this up, but there's a great concept by Engels and Marx, which is the withering of state, which is that when control is socialized, the state will become superfluous and wither away and die, which you wouldn't think would come from Marx, because obviously a lot of people consider him to be someone who caused things like the USSR and Mao and whatever else, quite very rationally. But the argument being that if you have the ability to have effective socialized control, decentralized control over things, big apparatus, then you no longer need these, these state apparatus, which are very easy to corrupt and very easy for control to end up in the hands of a few people. And in fact, this is the thing which most excites me about Bitcoin. So, I would probably class myself as like an ideological anarchist, I guess. And but my issue was always that within anarchism, you have like democracy from the bottom up, and then you have the sort of direct democracy. But the issue is sometimes like you need, well, for example, like a common universally recognized medium of medium of exchange. You need like big apparatus for decision making, and so you that's Bitcoin, isn't it? So you can have that kind of like anarchist dream, but you can also have like this large self-governing, self-controlling, DAOs, for example, you can have these big decentralized organizations for decision making, decentralized decision making. So yeah, it's incredibly good for humanity. Currently, it's obviously a lot of sci-fi, hot air, a lot of bright, starry-eyed ideology. But yeah, the technology is sound, and free and open source money, man. Like, look what free and open source software did. Imagine what free and open source money could do.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see, and like you said, a lot of people who had those sort of libertarian or anarchist ideas before Bitcoin, it was very difficult to really explain and work out how the world could work. And I think now having Bitcoin and having these layer twos and having everything that's being built at the moment, like you say, it is a bit sci-fi and it is a long way away, but it's incredibly exciting. And when a lot of the world, when I look around, is going to shit, and there are just nutters everywhere running around with diapers on their face and trying to stab people with injections and all sorts of crazy lunacy. You then just take a look at what's being built and you go, oh, thank fucking God.
I mean, we're probably on either ends of that argument spectrum, but it doesn't matter. It's freedom of association. You can voluntarily associate with Bitcoin. You don't have to associate with it. So you can have people with wildly different political views or whatever world views, but then they can still
enemies.
Pardon? Well, it's just dissident money, isn't it? Currently, I mean, but eventually it will become just a publicly, a utility, a commons, a commons for a monetary commons for people. I think the biggest problem people have had with a lot of the COVID stuff is that it's kind of felt prescribed, obviously, and then the lockdowns. You realised it's not like society and state has leveraged more control over us. It's just put in place the control it already had, but it just didn't actually enact. Like it always had the ability to take your rights away, but it didn't exercise. But it just didn't exercise it. So you wander around thinking you're free, blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I'm not free. Like they can just be basically put under house arrest, blah, blah, blah. But then how do you challenge? Well, I mean, obviously. From what I can tell, you don't think it's so much of an issue. But if you have like a global pandemic, maybe if you don't believe this is a global pandemic, if there is one in the future, how do you challenge it? And like, how do you one of the best ways to do it is through vaccination programs. Always has been with viruses. And maybe let's not talk about COVID, but let's talk about virus X, like the one in 12 monkeys, which does actually eradicate pretty much everybody on the planet. Like. How do you tackle these big problems? And I do think that, like collective decision making, decentralized decision making, is very encouraging to see.
Do you think, like, if you play that forward, then if people are going to be making decisions and collaborating, but you don't have like one central point, you don't have like a hierarchical system, it's like a network of people making decisions. Do you think that Bitcoin and private public key pairs and sort of this way of signing and proving that you are a person or an entity and that you want a certain thing to be done a certain way and that being recorded, will sort of play into that?
I think the day that captures become incredibly hard, passwords too long to be able to remember, and people, just the general population, has to get used to using public key crypto, will be a great day. Not only because it will prepare, and it will happen, not only because it will prepare people for using something like Bitcoin, which makes ready use of that, and it still confuses people like keys, private keys and public keys. Also because it's just great for like transferring ownership, for like you're empowering people with the keys of privacy, aren't you? For them to be able to have private communication. So one of the things which a bunch of us Bitcoiners and people working on bits as well have been really interested in is a protocol called Nostar, notes and other stuff relays, which is where you have a public-private key, and then you use a client to sign messages and then send the messages through relays. So the example I gave of this is I made a Twitter clone where you have you have your public, people can follow you through a public key, and you sign a message with a private key, and it uses Schnorr signatures as well, which is cool. Schnorr keys, but you can using that, you could use a hardware wallet, for example. So say if you've got like some Twitter account like Coca-Cola or something, then rather than anyone being able to tweet out from it, it has to be like signed by a multi-sig in some sort of hardware wallet, or some president, some wildcard president. It could be something which could have to be signed before sending out the message, the note. But another example, so one of the first extensions I made on LMBits was something called Diagon Alley. And in Diagon Alley, it's a concept for a decentralized marketplace where you have a market stall, and the emphasis is on a market stall, and you have your products on your market stall, and then you just point it at any front end. And then the front end indexes your market stall products. And then if a sale comes through, like it just requests an invoice directly from your server, and then someone pays it. And then you also have, like, using keys or something, you would have the ability in Diagon Alley to have reputation attached to your public key, which people could verify in some way. Well, so Fear was the only person, this is the developer on LMBits, he was the only person who recognized Diagon Alley was kind of cool. And that then went on to inspire what became Nostar. So for the Hackers Communication Congress in a couple of weeks, the next extension I'm making on LMBits is actually Diagon Alley, like 2, the next Diagon Alley, and it's using Nostar network. So you have, your products, and then so Nostar, the way Nostar network it works is you have clients, you have these relays which relay information. The relays are very dumb. You can take them out, it doesn't matter, because you can just spin them up easy. And then the clients can point any relays they want, and they can just send information through it. So I can send them my products to a relay. The relay can list it on some front end website. And then it doesn't have to do any, handling of any data. It doesn't have to have a database or anything. It's literally just like connected via WebSockets. People can verify that I have reputation because of my public key. There could be a relay which maybe just handles reputation, or some way of connecting it to some sort of real world entity. I don't know. But then if like that gets attacked and taken out, I can just use a different relay service. So you end up with like a censorship resistant marketplace. So that's using Nostar. And again, it's using, as soon as you kind of wrap your head around public key crypto, you start thinking about, solutions and ideas like that, for solving problems, for moving assets and paying for things, and having a digital way of representing who you are. And we've just got to get to the point where those captures get too hard. I'm surprised we're not already there, but it will be the answer. It's like the email thing, your grand trying to use email in the 90s and failing miserably, but now it's like a swipe on an iPad. It's that it's kind of scenario. We just got to kind of wait for everyone else to catch up. I tell you, something you reminded me of then was in LMBits, one of the extensions was DJ Livestream, which is Crypto Graffiti. He did like a set, and he had a QR code on the screen, and people could tip him. And then if you tipped enough, you would get a download link for the song.
Okay.
Yeah, which was cool. And then
was
that
was
was
something
it.
to do with Jukebox? You had something as one of your...
No, that's the Spotify Jukebox one.
That's the Spotify one.
Yeah, so this Crypto Cloaks one, what was cool about it was, and it's funny because it's not something which was picked up immediately, but like when you made a payment to it, 10% went to the DJ, and then 90% of the profits went to the producer. So it split the payment. And then we were like, oh, cool, you can split payments in Allen bits. So we've even now got a split payments extension. So you select a wallet and you say, any money comes into this wallet, I want X% to go here, X% to go there. And then you point, you distribute amongst all these other wallets, which you could do with microtransactions. So now, if you had a micro event, like a bunch of people get together, they want to make a coffee shop. Okay, they set up a coffee shop. They say, well, who's going to get what percentage of each sale? And then every time there's a point of sale, anyone working at a coffee shop, boom, they get the money in, they get their percentage in their phone, in their wallet, and they can see it going up. Yeah, super cool. So, but you could scale it up, and you could have it, split, go to a wallet, split, go to a wallet, split, go to a wallet. So it could go to a department. So the idea is that you could have, with microtransactions, you can have, because obviously we've all been at the whim of, limited transaction size with the legacy Visa networks and things and banking solutions. We usually end up with big HR departments. But this all goes back to that Nick Szabo social scalability thing. Like with Lightning microtransactions, you can have this crazy payment splitting. So in the future, you might buy something in a shop, and then all the profit, that sale, the money will go instantly to everybody working in that. And it might just be half a millisat here, a millisat there, but it will get split up and given to everybody. And in fact, like taxes could be paid at the point of sale. You could pay, and then your 20% of taxes could go. And in fact, like your wallet, you could even select, you could say, I want 70% to go to education, 20% to go to, the military. And you could actually select in your wallet what departments or what government sectors you want your taxes to go to. And then suddenly taxes kind of becomes like some democratic. So it's like these ideas, you have a new technology, like now we can do these sub-penny payments instantly. Well, what can we build with it? And then you stumble across something like the split payments thing. And then you're like, oh my God, like that concept of splitting payments on such a small scale could revolutionize industry, could revolutionize the way in which we produce stuff. And it's absolutely, it's a fascinating, it's something which I kind of want explored more. But yeah, going back to that, that idea about how Bitcoin will change our future and affect our future. I don't think it's not a case of our material world, which we have now, will exist and then it'll just be Bitcoin backed. It's all common senses of the age, what we assume is reality, and our material reality now will be thrown out the window. And there'll be some different hyper productive, more, fairer world which we walk into, and so this is one of the cool things we wanted to build into core, actually, which I'll put out there just in case anyone fancies contributing to Allen Bits. Someone suggested I really like this as well. So with Allen Bits, if you're running a server, you can charge a fee per transaction as a way of streaming some sats. The concept was that if you charge like 2% fee, you could give, say I'm Ibex and I give a point of sale to a hairdresser. Yeah. I could then say to them, look, here's a referral link. If you give that referral link to somebody, you will then get 0.01% of every fee, which I then get, to encourage them to propagate it. And then that hairdresser gives it to another hairdresser. And then that hairdresser has someone in the shop who wants to accept Bitcoin. And they also have a referral link. So you could create, this pyramid of referral links being given out for an Allen Bits server install. And that savvy original adopter of Bitcoin, the hairdresser, the person at the top of that pyramid, they'll just start having sats streaming into they'll be seeing it on their wallet. They'll have all these sats coming in. They won't know where it's coming from. It's from random transactions in a shop, a garage.
Because they're routing the payments.
Because all the payments, it's all the same Allen Bits server. It's, Ibex's Allen Bits server, and they're still getting 2%, and they're just allowing 1% of that 2% fee to be split amongst, percentage wise amongst all these, against this referral scheme. Now that is possible, and it's possible to have that money streaming, that referral scheme, and it's such an encouraging thing to have. You don't just get a random check every month. Like you look at your phone and you've got an extra sat. Where did that come from? And you see the sats rolling in. So I can't wait for all that stuff to kind of be built.
Me too.
With Lightning. Right.
Me too. It's going to be a very exciting time, and it's all these things they blow my mind and get me very hyped.
Yeah, this is where all the Muse stuff comes in, isn't it? Why people are kind of inspired to create art and try and understand these new concepts is because because obviously it just triggers the imagination, like all these things which are now possible, subconsciously triggers the imagination, and it creates in your mind, it's going to create all these different versions of reality, which then obviously you're going to have to try and communicate some way or vent some way. So you kind of do it through the creation of art. So I think that's why there's lots of kind of the art scene on Bitcoin so interesting. I'd be interested to see whether that continues. If it became like a standard, then would there still be art around Bitcoin?
I think it changes at that point because, like you said, I mean, a lot of the ideas that we're trying to convey or artists are trying to convey are really, well, they're world changing, but they're also complicated, and art obviously is a way of expressing that to people in a different way. But at the moment, it still feels edgy and different, and like people who are interested in this are outliers. It's not the norm, and I think when it becomes if it's like everyone uses it all the time, that things will change, but
it'll mature, it'll kind of age past that, and then the distance will, the oddballs and the weirdos will move on to something else.
that's it. But that's why 21ism do what we do, is like we try and shed light on not just developers and people who are doing the technical side, but also the artists, the musicians, the people who are trying to wrap their heads around this and allow others to do the same. And it's a lot of fun working with these people with the big dreams, the big ideas, and it's fun to be around.
Well, there's some cool, obviously some great art coming out. Thanks so much for producing all this content. I'm going to have to go because I got to shoot, and I completely lost track of time. It was so much fun.
me too. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me and everything that you do and pushing these dreams further and further towards reality.
Yeah, well, let's hope some of this weird sci-fi software hardware will eventually be useful to somebody in the real material world. But if it's not, then it's just fun anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will be. Yeah, thank you so much. Lovely to speak to you, and
you too, man.
hopefully we'll catch up again soon.